Thank you for watching. This video is going to be about an upcoming workshop with Jerry Sander and Kristy Gaisford that'll be August 21st and 22nd. And as I spoke with Jerry and Kristy, I told them up front that this is not going to be an infomercial style, and they were vigorously nodding their heads saying, yes, yes, we don't want to have that kind of thing. So we're going to talk about what this workshop is about, but we're going to do it in a way that gives you value just for watching it now, but also gives you a solid understanding of what you will participate in and what you'll experience and what you'll take away from it when you sign up for the workshop, okay? So what we'll start with first is I'll have Jerry and Kristy introduce themselves and give you their background as to where they come from. And then we'll talk about specifically what's in this workshop. Now, before we do that, I just wanted to point out that as a lawyer, I've become much more favorable, in my opinion, of mental health care and the work that can be done for people. There are plenty of incompetent lawyers and there are plenty of incompetent healthcare professionals. But when people come to me, a lot of times they have problems that they're experiencing as they go through a divorce or separation or child custody issue, where they have real problems they need to deal with. Some of them personal, some of them in their relationship with the other person that I cannot help them with. And sometimes that's not clear to a client. I really shouldn't be the one talking to you about this, and you really shouldn't be trying to pay me to solve this particular problem because it's not a legal problem, or it's not a problem I'm qualified as a lawyer to address. I've found that a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people, most of them, benefit from going to speak with a mental health professional, not necessarily on a regular counseling or therapy basis. For some people that makes sense, but oftentimes just to hear what these professionals have to say and to give them kind of the perspective somebody needs to say, oh, so not everything I'm going through is a legal problem. Not everything I'm going through is going to be dealt with at the legal system level, but there's things I can do to make my life and the life of my children and the relationship with my ex better. With that in mind, Jerry, I'll give you the floor. Let's start with your background, and then we'll move to you, Kristy.
Thank you, Eric, for doing this and for having us on. My name's Jerry Sander. I live in the Hudson Valley of New York. How I got involved with Utah, we could talk about quickly, but I am a licensed clinical social worker. I went to New York University. I went through my own divorce. I have 4 children. I was married for 21 years with 4 children, together with the same person for 28 years. And I was surprised to find myself getting divorced at age 53. So the interest in the topic was not academic or theoretical for me. It was very much related to how did I do and what would have helped me that I didn't have available then. So that's why I reached out to Kristy. We were at a training workshop about how to teach relational skills. And we both had to make presentations. I listened to her presentation, and she seemed like someone I could learn from. And then when I found out that she had been married and divorced and had 4 children also, my first thought was, what kind of crazy person has 4 children? And then I reminded myself that would be me. And we talked. All right, good.
I have 4 children.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. And then we just found that we started doing workshops together and really liked that we were not exactly alike. We have a lot of differences, and that when you can find someone to work with intelligently on a project who is different from you, that's like gold. So that's a little bit of who I am. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. So I'm Kristy Gaisford, and like Jerry said, so I have I'm a licensed clinical social worker as well. I got my master's degree at Columbia University in New York City. And like Jerry said, we met a couple of years ago and found out we had a lot in common. I'd been through a divorce about 5 years ago, and we had very different experiences. But one thing that was similar is just how alone you feel in the process. No one's ever, usually you've never done it before. You're totally overwhelmed by your life is changing completely. And this whole legal system that you have no idea how to navigate. There's just so many things that are thrown at you and what to do about the kids. There's so many issues that come up. And so it was really Jerry's idea that how much we could offer people who are really struggling through this, and we could have a situation where we could all meet together and learn and process and and learn from each other and offer support through one of the hardest times of people's lives.
And before we move on, I thought I'd ask, but really struggling clearly is a person who's going to benefit from this. But what about someone who just finds themselves frustrated?
I wouldn't have nominated myself in the category of really struggling, because when I was getting divorced, I still went to work and I functioned absolutely the way you're supposed to function. Looking back at it, oh man, I was really struggling. So that's part of the problem, is being able to identify what you need, because I think the emphasis is just, let me get through this, let me get through this, let me do what I have to do. And somehow if I do that, it's a victory. I realize now that didn't begin to address the issues that was really underneath it.
And that's what I was asking about, because I think a lot of people who, I mean, there are some people that a separation, divorce, child custody dispute turns their lives upside down. There's allegations of abuse and molestation and fraud and infidelity and physical abuse and domestic violence, all of which is false, right? And nobody believes me, and the cops have been called, and I spent the night in jail or whatever it is. The children were taken away from me. I was made to take a drug test, and I've never touched drugs in my life. Well, clearly that's really struggling. I like what you had to say, Jerry, because all of you going through this process will find yourself struggling more than you think you are in most cases. Am I trying to say that everybody needs to go visit a mental health professional? Yes. You probably thought I was going to say no, but folks, I think that all of you would benefit from this, even if all it is to find out, you know what, just talking to me this once is about all you really needed if you happen to be in that category. But it does help you to find out, kind of to take the temperature of your family, your own mental health, that of your children, and let you know what resources are out there. And I assume that that's one of the things that this workshop is going to cover, is just to kind of help people realize just how involved or disengaged you can be, depending upon what needs you have, to talk about it, to receive some guidance and some advice, some therapy, as the case may be. What would you say to that?
Kristy?
Yeah,
Kristy?
yes, that's all true. And there's so many questions people ask, like, how did I get here? How did I choose this person? How did this end up in such a failure? Is there something wrong with me? What did I not see? What could I have done differently? And there is something, therapy is amazing, but there's something about group therapy that is extra healing, in my opinion, because you're sitting there with other people and you can see the beauty and the goodness and the intelligence in these people, and yet they're struggling with the exact same things you are. And it helps you to feel like, okay, well, I can't be that bad. These people ended up in this situation too, and they didn't know better either. We were all doing the best we can. And there's something about the group process that is extra healing. And especially, I'm here in Utah, there's somebody in Maine or England. I mean, we've had people from all over, and it's amazing how we're all so similar in the things that we struggle with. And it's how dumb am I?
I know it is comforting to know it's like, okay, I'm not the first person to go through this, and I've handled it better than others and worse than others, but it's nice to see that I'm not a unique case. It gives me hope that I can work through this. I agree with you on that. Now, this is not a 2-day group therapy session, is it?
No, it's much more focused and guided than that, but we're going to use breakout rooms to allow people to have a lengthier process. Instead of just giving a homework assignment, write a paragraph about, what your dad was like, what your mom was like. We'll let people take a few minutes, do that, and share it with each other. And
okay.
You get a larger sense of depth from doing that, even though it's not a formal group therapy. A really great group therapy goes on for a long time, like many, many, many weeks. So it's a condensed group experience, but it's educative. And it touches on that compassion and sharing that Kristy was talking about. It's interesting when someone across the room can feel more of your goodness and express it in your direction than you're feeling it for yourself.
That's true. Yeah, when you feel like that you're just a hot mess, and somebody says, "No,
that's right.
You've got
you're
some
a good
problems."
person.
Yeah, but you're a good person. You can handle this, and no, this is not all you're doing. And I agree. Kristy, I wanted to ask you next. One of the things we talked about before we started recording, was something that I really liked about this is about the process, and this is about processing this experience. Would you just take a moment to explain one of the things that this workshop will do with regard to processing this experience?
Yeah, I think it will help people process what happened, right? What is the story of your relationship, and how can you now be a survivor? And we want people to be able to see what happened and gain information and knowledge, what makes sense to them, and they can take that into the future to make their life into whatever they want. We don't want people to be stuck in this victim place of, this happened to me and now I'm just going to sit in this victim place and watch my life be destroyed because I failed at this one thing. We want people to be able to look at it and say, okay, this is what happened. I was young. I didn't know better. I did my best. This happened. We, either grew apart or blew up or however it happened. And I can learn from that. I can learn new skills going forward. I can have a better relationship in the future. And I can use this to make me stronger in the future instead of, like I said, ruined. I can use all of this for my good. And it will empower people that feel stuck, because when you're first going through it, you really do just feel like things fell apart and where do I go from here?
Thanks. A couple of questions before we launch into the agenda, that what will be covered in those 2 days. Is the fact that we've got a man and a woman conducting this workshop an accident?
Jerry, no.
In my older age, I've come to appreciate that I'm not looking to just hang around or talk with people who are exactly like me. And for me, that challenge has meant to try and understand a woman's point of view more and listen to a different voice. And I require great intelligence from whom I hang around with. And Kristy filled that bill. And I realized her perspective was uniquely different than mine. Like, she was talking about the ways that we have commonalities, but we also have differences. And yet we came together to embrace the same model of working together relationally. So it was interesting finding someone who felt the same core values was important, but whose life experience was pretty different than mine. So it was no accident, really. I mean, I'm a New Yorker, she's in Utah, and yet she spent years in New York. I haven't spent years in Utah yet, but I didn't feel like it's an accident. I don't know.
And I don't think it's an accident that you've got both a man's and a woman's perspective, a divorced man's and a divorced woman's perspective, because I've given some workshops where we help people to prepare legal documents. But part of that process is, even though I'm not a mental health professional, I have basically, if not literally, figuratively, the men and the women kind of square off against each other and they talk to each other for a little bit. And the purpose when I do it is to show them that there is a difference in perspective and there's a difference in values that you'll often see from the husband and wife's side. I'm not saying that to sound sexist, but often it'll be like the husbands will say, well, I feel like this. Doesn't everybody? Only to find out that the wives will say, no, that's not as important to me as it is to you, and vice versa. So I do think it's nice that we've got the perspectives of the men and the women. And one thing you both talked to me about before we went on camera is that it's like, we find you both found that there were things that you saw differently, but that was a good thing because you could then understand each other's perspectives. Yeah. And that doesn't mean acceptance. I think a lot of times people say, oh, I understand, meaning I now agree. No, but at least you understand, which helps you be able better to deal with somebody else, friendly or unfriendly. At least you understand their perspective better and you know how better to relate to them.
Yeah.
So I just think this to me, I'm happy about this because it's an opportunity for men and women to participate in the workshop together, knowing that there's going to be a man's and a woman's perspective from the presenters that will also help the men and women attendees have a better framework for expressing their opinions, knowing it's okay, knowing that it's not all women doing the presenting from only a woman's perspective. Because I know as a man, if I were coming to a workshop, being told how to deal with divorce, taught by nothing but women, I'd kind of feel like, well, I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot about how women feel, but I
That's
don't know
right.
if they're going to,
That's right.
but if these women try to tell me how men feel, well, maybe
Right.
they're really perceptive, but I might be a little turned off at that.
I've been at those, by the way, where a number of women are trying to explain to a lot of women about men. And I'm sitting there quietly trying to remain quiet because I don't want my head handed to me. And I don't want to be the typical male to interrupt and correct and mansplain. But I also feel like if you want to know, why don't you ask me? So do you really want to know?
Yeah.
Or don't you really want to know? I've learned to really be quiet and really want to know about what people who are different than me feel and think. And I think Kristy's the same. Yeah.
And whether it's a heterosexual or same-sex marriage, you still are going, there are things that are kind of just innate in males and females. It's good to be able to interact with each other with two workshop heads who are male and female, working together to help understand. Okay, with that in mind, would you tell us what the agenda is for these 2 days? First of all, is it 2 full days?
Yes, I mean, we're starting at 11 o'clock Eastern time so that it can be 9 o'clock Utah time.
Okay.
So I think it's 9 to 4, is it Utah time? Yes. Yeah. And my guess is I'm not sure we even given enough time when we set aside time for these activities, but we're going to find out. So over the course of the 2 days, the overview is that we're going to go from where on earth did you ever learn what you learned about attachment and relationships and marriage? What did you see in your family growing up? How did your folks express their love for each other? Or did you see that marriage was not tenable, that they divorced themselves? And in my experience, I'm a child of divorce. People who are the child of divorce have different perspectives oftentimes than others. So where did you learn what you learned about relationships? What's your pattern of attachments? Do you always break up with people before they can break up with you, etc.? And what did you go into marriage thinking marriage was supposed to be like? That's one whole component that you never really get asked when you're going through the legal process.
Okay,
so we're going through.
Yeah. Nicely done. Nicely done. What's the next thing on the agenda?
Let's see, family of origin. Okay. Who were you? What were you like before you were married? Were you happy? Were you depressed? Did you like to ride your bicycle a lot? Did you like to fish? When I start asking people about what they were like before puberty, even, or certainly before marriage, you get a whole other version of the person. And they'll often start crying like, wow, I forgot that person I was before I was the competent adult who was trying to be married and do what married people do. So I want to bring people back in touch with who they were before marriage even entered into it.
Could I just mention one thing I've Sure. seen in extreme situations, and I understand. Look, this isn't for extreme situations. Obviously, people that are in extremis can benefit from this. But as you said so well, both of you, it's like you don't realize just how bad it is until you've had a chance to kind of reflect on with someone, and maybe it turns out that you're handling this as well as can be expected. That alone has value. For the rest of us, it's nice to kind of see where we are on the spectrum, take our temperature, because I was just going to say, I remember one man in particular that came as a client of mine. I'm not a psychologist or a mental health professional, but just a broken psychologically and emotionally man. And seeing how he overcame. And it took about 1.5 years, but he did it. And he told me about what he was like, just like you said, Jerry. And I was like, well, the guy that you're describing is clearly not the man in front of me now. And as he worked through that, he's gotten back to, he was an outdoorsman. He was someone who really liked doing that, just didn't do it anymore. So it was a beautiful thing.
Kristy, do you have that outline in front? Are you, because I'm up to about lunchtime, but what I want to say is then we look at what dance has developed within the marriage. I come home, I do this, she does that, I do this, then she does that. And then you get this whole circular dance that develops within a marriage that sometimes people think is normal, quote unquote. And it just, the phrase that I can't stand hearing anymore, Eric, is it is what it is. Ouch.
Well, at the end of the day,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, please. So whenever I hear that phrase now, I think they're really saying I'm heartbroken and I don't know a way forward, that I just can't get out of this dance. So that realizing what the dance was in your marriage that just broke up and talking about it and seeing other ways it could have been handled will help you in your next relationship.
Yeah.
Kristy, do you want to pick up after lunch there? Or?
Sure. What you contributed to the dance?
Yeah.
What was your dysfunctional role in it? What was your partner's? And we'll do breakout rooms for that. We always learn a lot from each other. And we're going to talk about the legal system and all that goes into that.
Before you go to legal system, there are some people that may have never done this before. What is a breakout room?
Oh,
or a breakout session?
So we'll have everybody in one big room where we talk and discuss, but then we'll have smaller rooms where you're talking with maybe 4 people instead of the large group and sharing your experiences.
And you can do that even though we're all virtually attending?
Yeah, we've been amazed. Best thing I've seen in Zoom yet, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
People love
All right.
it.
So breakout room, breakout session, that's what that is, where you're in smaller groups.
And we can visit too. We can bop between all the different rooms and see how they're doing. Yeah.
So Jerry and Kristy can go into these breakout sessions, but also drop out of them so that the participants can talk amongst themselves, because that's got a purpose, and that's some of the projects you're working on will involve doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Kristy. You said then you're kind of the legal system. Now, does that mean that I'm going to be like a special guest speaker? No. I'm not going to be there. No.
We're just going to talk about some of the things that we have to go through in the legal system and the trauma that it brings up and how to best get through it. And then we're going to talk about identity confusion. The day you wake up and you go to the doctor and you're handed a form and it says, are you single, married, or divorced? And for 15 years you've written married, and now you have to check the divorced box. And you don't really know who you are for a minute there because your role has been taken away from you.
I want to add 2 things, if it's okay.
Please.
The discovery that the marriage is broken. In my experience, it's very rare that both people walk into a room at the same time and say, you know what? I feel like our marriage is over. Don't you feel that way? Yes, I feel that way too. Let's get divorced. It doesn't usually happen like that. I find more asymmetry to it. One person feels like, you know, we're not perfect, but we're not so bad, and there's a lot worse and we could work on it. And the other person feels like, no, we're totally done. We're totally done. So for both of them, that discovery that we're having a divorce is different. And that's where, you know, Kristy's story and my story were a little bit different. Like what is that moment? And take a minute just to reflect on where you were and what happened when you realized it's not making it better anymore. This marriage is over. What was that like? So that's one thing. And with the legal system, I want to say that it's so interesting. You were talking about guiding people towards mental health. I often guide people to lawyers, but explain to them, your lawyer doesn't really want your 800-page journal in which you list all the times your spouse let you down or was less good than they could have been. He doesn't want that. It's not about that.
It's not about that. It's not that we don't care about your happiness.
Right.
Like we have a job to do, and that is divide the assets, divide the debts, divide the kids, because that's what the law does.
And that leaves people feeling very unsatisfied because they want their Judge Judy moment. They want the judge to read the journal and say, how did you ever put up with this all these years? You're such a good person. Your spouse is so terrible. And they don't get that. So I try to prepare them for, it's about as exciting as the Department of Motor Vehicles. You come, you wait in line, you get it stamped, and you're done. So everything else has to go somewhere else. So that's why this workshop can be a place to process what was that emotionally.
That the legal system is not designed or equipped to handle.
Yeah, when did you first think that the relationship was heading towards divorce, and when did you know it was over? That is a big moment.
Now,
did you want me
day
to go?
2, right? We're sort of almost at the end of day 1, right?
Yeah. So that is, sorry, I'm looking.
All right.
So yeah, that's like the,
Okay.
now you're free and you're single. So what does that look like facing the future? Like, what's dating going to be like? When are you going to be ready? What are you going to look for? All the things that come with that.
And we're going to slow that down, because for me at age 54, when I started dating again, dating at age 54 is a podcast in itself. And there's a part of you that says, who am I kidding? I had my good years, it failed, and I'm done. And that's a pretty heavy existential moment. And then another part of you goes, no, I'm not done. I'm still alive and well. And there's probably other people like me out there who would maybe want to be with me. So both voices are usually present, like feeling like a loser in many cases, even if you were the one to initiate the divorce, and then feeling like you want to be just left alone versus go out there and find someone.
But I'm free, Kristy. I mean, what does that entail besides the fact that I'm, like Jerry's pointed out, I'm now unmoored from that relationship and that ex-spouse or ex-partner. What else does that freedom entail?
Well, it's funny because I talked about this in a podcast Jerry and I did about divorce, but at first I felt really relieved. Like, I don't have to answer to somebody else. Somebody else isn't going to get mad at me. Like, I'm free to be my own adult and I'm my own boss, and there's nobody else to, to have to report to or something. But then with that freedom comes loneliness, and now what? So then there's the whole issue of, okay, now what am I going to put my energy to with this freedom? What do I want to do with this freedom? And then one thing we talk about a lot is you're not as free as you think you are, because I just said I felt relief, but no, I mean, I still have to deal with my ex. We share 4 kids. So one thing we want to talk about.
I now have to replace what my ex was doing for me and my children in our marriage, because that may not be there or may not be there in the same to the same degree.
Yeah. And I still have to communicate with this person. I still have to send my kids back and forth to this person. So
that's a huge, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's a huge thing. No matter what it says on the legal document, where the rubber meets the road is every week. They spend Thanksgiving with you. Oh, I thought that meant you were bringing over the night before Thanksgiving. You were supposed to pick them up at the soccer game. I meant that doesn't mean halfway through the soccer game. This is where all the stuff happens. And the presence of children cannot be underestimated. Along with, we're going to talk about guilty parenting. The parent who just loads them up with money stuff and other things, and there's no rules or boundaries anymore because they feel so guilty about having hurt them by having gotten divorced. There's a whole bunch of child reactions that can happen to divorce, and I've worked with children of divorce in support groups. And the biggest surprise to me, Eric, was how happy they were that their parents got divorced. I thought they would be full of tears. They say, finally, mom can meet someone nice now and dad can meet someone nice and they can be happy.
That's interesting.
It was interesting.
There's also the guilt that I felt a lot of guilt is now I'm working full time. Divorce changes your lifestyle. So I wasn't there for my kids all the hours that I used to be. So that's a whole other subject.
Mm-hmm.
Kristy, do you think that will help people that, especially that are not divorced or not yet fully separated, have a better experience negotiating a settlement? That just occurred to me. This was not something I wrote in my notes, but it just occurs to me that because you're understanding each other's perspectives, taking responsibility for what's your fault, and giving yourself credit for what you've done well, you develop a better understanding of these dynamics. When I listen to what Jerry says as well, it's like, oh, okay, you know what? We are going to need to I'm going to need to make some accommodations for my ex because I realized that he or she was dependent on me for this, whether that be financially or whether that be as like someone that does a lot of the driving or taking the children to activities, whatever that might be. Do you suppose, Kristy, that this would make people better able to understand each other and then agree in mediation or when they make a settlement so they stay out of court?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you could get people to do this beforehand, it would save a lot of time and money in the court system.
Can a couple attend this, or would you recommend that they not both attend?
A divorced couple, divorcing couple,
or a divorced couple? Do you want people to just kind of show up,
wow,
by themselves, or
I think I would welcome that.
I think if both of the people felt comfortable attending, then they should attend. I think a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable if their ex was attending, but if they're the kind of couple that both feel comfortable, then yeah, I think they'd benefit a lot.
And this is where, Kristy, I know this was something that was in my notes. Okay, those of us that have been to a workshop, whether virtual or in person, or especially on subjects like this, there's always that one guy or that one gal who monopolizes the conversation. And every time any subject comes up, they have a life story they get to tell. And the rest of us are sitting there saying, oh my goodness, I paid so much money to listen to Jerry and Kristy.
Yeah.
And now this person, so can we expect that there?
No,
I'm not going to let that person get away with it. You know what I'll do? I'll say, here's a box of Kleenex, go into the next room, come back when you're ready to be a regular participant in the group, because no one gets to monopolize here. We all get equal amounts of time. I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, I'm glad, because that was important to me. I told Kristy and Jerry, I said, this is something that I know a lot of people are going to be concerned about, because they've often been disappointed by what otherwise would have been a great workshop, because there's always that attention seeker or that person that just kind of feels like they're the center of attention. Okay, so that's not going to happen.
No, and Jerry and I do have a lot of experience, which helps. We structure it in a way that doesn't allow for that. So.
Kristy has a nicer way about it. She wouldn't take out the tissue box. She would say, you know what, let's talk after the group or something, probably. But I would do the tissue box. Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered it. And so before we finish, if there's any other notes that you had that you wanted to make the viewers aware of, and then what we'll do is we'll just follow up with letting them know where they can register, and that will just appear in the description section of this video itself. So if those of you that are watching, if you just want to click on that, you can do that too, and then you'll see that just below my face. You can see that there's the log, or at least the link is there too. All right, so we broke there, and now we're going to just finish this for those of you that have stayed to the end, because we're going to reiterate when it is, what it costs, because that's something we haven't talked about yet, Jerry and Kristy. And then one thing that I wanted to make sure people were aware of is, if people come away from the workshop saying, this has inspired me to do the work I need to do, but I realize this is just the beginning, is there any resources you can direct people to afterward? All right, so in rapid fire, I'll start with Jerry. Jerry, again, the dates that this is being held?
Saturday, August 21st, Sunday, August 22nd.
And Kristy, the times that these are going on the 21st and the 22nd?
So it's 9 o'clock to 4:30 Mountain Time, 11 o'clock to 6:30 Eastern Time, and we have an hour lunch break.
All right. And as far as what people that have said, this was very helpful to me, I got my money's worth. Oh, wait, we didn't talk about that. The cost, Jerry?
$475 for an individual, and $295 if you're a student or an intern.
All right. And then, as I said, for those that have said this has been a great experience, I got my money's worth, there's more that I feel that I need to do or that I want to do. Is there a website where people can go? Can they continue to talk to each other? What are the options?
Yeah, you don't have to do anything, but we have found that people really connect over this 2-day period, and they want to keep talking. And we as humans need a place to keep checking in. And so we are offering every month at one time that you can get together as a group with both of us to continue this support and to process it, and as things come up. And Jerry and I have found with the other groups we've done, it's been invaluable.
Let me ask you this, and is this workshop set up so that people will be kind of directed into that, or is that just an option?
It's just an option to join it
Okay.
after if you feel like it's helpful.
So the
to you.
workshop itself is a freestanding thing that delivers what it's supposed to do, and with no expectations that anyone continues unless he or she wants to.
Right.
No, they don't have to see either of us ever again. If they show up and apply themselves and they're really fully present and do the work, they're going to get a lot out of this.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much for speaking to me about this. And again, if you want to register, here is the link, and the link is a live link in the description section of this video as well. Thanks, Kristy and Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.